welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. I'm your host, Shemaiah Reed, and we are here once again, 9:30 a.m. The Answer. And man, if you want to check out our amazing shows, you can go to IamRefocusedRadio.com. But today, we have a special guest, and he is on 9:30 himself, the one and only Riley Davidson. And he's a realtor, insurance adjuster, author, radio host, husband, father from San Antonio, Texas. And before I get too deep into the show, I just want to welcome to the show. Say, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, sir.
So before we get into the awesome details about your life,
okay,
tell the audience a little bit about you.
About me. Well, I was born and raised here in San Antonio, military family. My father was a aircraft inspector for the Air Force. He retired Air Force. My mom was a registered nurse all my life, and both really hard-working folks. And they both master's degrees. And then they picked themselves up from their bootstraps and really made did the very best possible that they could for our family. And so the main post office on Parambato Road, I grew up on 6 acres back there.
Awesome, man. And life growing up, since you were a military family, what were some of the skill sets that you were able to be exposed to while you were growing up, and how did you apply that in your life?
Well, Dad retired the year before I was born in 1963. I was born in 64, the last of the boomers, born at Brooke Army Medical Center. And so the skill sets really, I mean, it's do it yourself. My father was a brilliant man in terms of what he was able to do with tools or anything of that nature. And I remember he actually received a commendation from President Carter for saving the government some $13 million because of one of the items that he had expressed needed to be taken care of with regard to the airplanes. And so, I mean, literally, he could do anything with duct tape and baling wire. It didn't matter. I mean, the vehicles, whatever, he would be able to create, as opposed to we go to AutoZone and we go pick up a water pump or what have you. He could take it, tear it down, and rebuild it, and that's all he needed, those two things.
And as far as the experience that he had and the experience that you were witnessing him with his work ethic, how was the family household? Like, what were some of the traditions that you experienced growing up?
Well, I'll be real honest. Dad wasn't always around. And so my mom was the one that she was the one that really guided and directed us and made sure that we had food on the table, that we had the best education. And, I remember the tremendous sacrifice that she went through in terms of making sure that we had what we needed. And she would, as a registered nurse, she would work some 16-hour shifts, and she would literally take herself to the point where she was physically exhausted by the end of that shift. So if you work a 16-hour type of a shift, then the adrenaline kicks in and you're able to do things that you wouldn't normally think that you would be able to do. But then when you get off, it leaves you and you're depleted. And so there would be many times where I would be going to school. I graduated from MacArthur High School in 1982. And there would be many times where I'd be going to school and I would talk to some of my buddies on the football team, and they would say, "Hey, I saw your mom." And when they said that, what they meant was your mom pulled off the side of the road and she was asleep in her vehicle. Wow. Yeah. And that's the kind of, the very first time I ever saw her, it kind of freaked me out. I mean, it looked like she was dead. But she would literally park the car. She couldn't go on any farther and literally roll to the side and sleep until she was physically able to operate the vehicle again, and then she'd go home. So as I was going to school, she was coming home from a 16-hour shift. And that's the kind of sacrifice that I saw growing up. And that's really what helped me propel me into the radio program that I now run. And because we lost her this past July.
And with that work ethic, when you were going to school and she was doing all of that work, how did y'all find time to stay together and do activities.
It's very difficult. It is. And one of the reasons why she wanted to work the night shift was so that she could be home during the day. Like when we would come home, she would take care of the house, obviously, and make sure that we had food. And then when when we would get off of school, then we'd be able to converse for a little while before she'd end up going back and doing it again. And she did a lot of overtime that way. And really, when she retired from Bear County Hospital, or University Hospital now, when she retired, she was the oldest nurse working at the facility. And that's the kind of, leadership, and that's the kind of, do whatever you need to do. It is what it is, and you do what you got to do until you don't have to do it anymore. And that's really what she taught me.
And during school, by the way, you listen to I Am Refocused Radio, 9:30 a.m. The Answer. When you were in school, what were some of the activities that you enjoyed, or what was your favorite subject? Because everyone has their little perks in school. What was yours?
Well, I'll be real honest. Through the 6th grade, I was in a parochial school, and basically my hobby and everything I did, I was a goof off. I was the class clown, and so I kind of specialized in that. Then when I went to growing up on the farm, especially, I had outlets that other people didn't have on the 6 acres, and I would take to the woods, and I read like crazy. So it was all about mountain men, it was about the Indians. And then when I went in 7th grade, I went to Kruger Middle School, and it was a complete and total culture shock. And so then my focus became football. I played tackle football since I was in the 1st grade at Fort Sam Houston, and then which is kind of they got some stories with regard to that. But then I coached Stone through Kruger, and then on to MacArthur to play football. But also drama was a big thing. I had to sell my horse when we sold the farm, when they built the new post office. We sold the farm. I sold my horse and quit drama to really focus on football and for high school. But drama, speech, even in drama, what I really loved the most was a monologue, and that ability to one person get up and whether it's Shakespeare or what have you, to actually have the opportunity to be focused and have a plan, have something that you're really driving towards. Yeah. And I've studied that throughout history, the different monologues that Patrick Henry, that really the Gettysburg Address, those times when somebody got up and they had a focus, they had something they really wanted to say, and they did it using the language, which is such a beautiful thing, and really delivered that message and motivated people. Shakespeare, St. Crispin's Day. I don't know if you ever heard that. Oh yeah, it's a beautiful soliloquy, and so that type of thing. That's really what I was drawn to. I was in the rich classes, but again, I kind of goofed off. We weren't. I wasn't as focused on the academics as I should have been.
But hard work runs through your family, from your dad's military experience to your mom and her hard work during the times where it's like you said, she had to take naps.
Right.
But I don't know how you sleep, because to today you're doing multiple things, and we're going to get down there soon. But by the way, we're listening to 9:30 a.m. The Answer, I'm Refocused Radio. We host Shemaiah Reed, talking to the one and only Riley Davidson.
The only one that would admit to it. That's fair.
But as you're growing up, you're getting older. Was college something that you were thinking about, or what was the next step after high school?
Okay, after high school, so I had the dubious honor of being the team captain of the MacArthur High School Brahmas in 1981-1982 high school year, and we went 0-10. So I take full blame, and so we didn't win a single game, and then from there I went to UTSA, and if I thought I was goofing off before, the universe hadn't come and knocked at my door really yet. I didn't learn the lesson I should have from that senior year. And so if I thought I was goofing off before, when we went to UTSA, we would play quarters out in the concourse. And so I had taken the hardest classes, calculus and what have you, and I completely bombed. And then I was in a motorcycle accident in February of 1983. So graduated in 82, started college, completely bombed my first semester, was put on academic probation. Then I had the motorcycle accident. And that's when, like I said, the universe came knocking and it's like, okay, Riley, something's wrong here. What are you going to do about it? And there's a verse that where it talks about, and literally I was broken, bleeding on the side of the road. And that will do something for your psyche, and it changes you. And so when I did finally go to, I went to Southwest Texas. I was still in a full cast. When I went, I was had the opportunity to be in one of the very first co-op dorms, a male co-op dorm up in Southwest Texas. And when I went, I started to take all of the regular, courses, the enriched courses, the calculus and what have you. And then the more I started to contemplate things, and the more I realized there's something that we're all missing here. And so I started to take philosophy and religion courses, and I realized, and even to the point where that's one of the reasons why I left college, was because I could tell these people were shutting things down. And I remember, just to tell a little story, philosophy of war religion. And the very first day that we went in, and the professor started asking questions, and he asked, okay, what religion are you? And so he put all that up on the board. And then he went literally from religion to religion to religion to religion, and he ripped out the rug from underneath these religions. And so, and you can figure that it's Christianity and the top religions. And he literally took the underpinnings from each of these beliefs, and he proved how there's no possible way, according to him, that they could be true. And I remember seeing ladies that were in that class, and they were devastated. They were crying, and this is the first day of philosophy of war religion. And I realized at that point that this man he was a rebel without a cause. His first class, the first thing he did was he ripped out the underpinnings of all these people's beliefs, and he had nothing to replace them with. Wow. And I thought, that's not fair. That's not the way you help people. That's not the way. There's plenty of things that people believe in, absolutely, that simply don't hold water. But you can't do it that way. You've got to give them something to replace. That's where the hope comes in, and that's really what I was telling you. That's what my show is about. It's trying to give people hope, especially through the times that we're living in right now. Yeah. So one of the things that my mom gave me, and everything about growing up, she was born 6 months before the stock market crashed in 29, and that Great Depression really it was her focus. I mean, it literally was part of everything she did. And so she translated that to us. And so when you've got young people now that have never lived, the worst that they can possibly look back at is the Great Recession of 2008. They have never seen what we're seeing now and what we're going to see. And you've got a whole generation that has not really, or possibly more when you look at the different generational mixes after the boomers and X, Y, and all the rest of it. When you look at it, you've got people that have never seen what we're about to see, and they're not ready. As a nation, we're a lot softer than they were in what they call the Great Generation, the Silent Generation.
And that's very interesting. By the way, you're listening to 930 AM The Answer. Your host Shemaiah Reed, talking to Riley Davidson, and all about his life. And it's interesting how you were talking about college, that professor who was bold enough to basically try to shut down faith. In short terms. And how do you see, because we are kind of jumping to what's going on today, which is perfect because faith has a lot to do with how we handle circumstances.
Absolutely.
How do you see personally keeping yourself above water with keeping the right mindset, getting through these times? Because it is difficult times we're living in right now. It's unexpected. It's uncertain. No one knows what's going to happen in the future. But how are you getting through personally?
Well, I don't want to correct you, okay? But it's unprecedented what we're living through, but not necessarily unexpected. Okay, these are things that as you look at the cycles of history, you can tell. The farther you look back in history, the farther you can see forward. And so, yes, these are unprecedented times, and we are going to see it. They're supposed to release the numbers today for the unemployment rate, and so they know 17 million. They're expecting at least 20 million, and so, you know, as we move forward, it's going to get even worse. The small businesses haven't been compensated for, you know, what they feel like they've lost the same way as some of the other companies, and so, you know, this is something that it's snowballing. It's rolling. This rolling. What Dr. Fauci called a rolling reopening. You know, you've got a rolling snowball coming down the hill. And economically speaking, we have destroyed the country for all intent and purpose. We went from 3.5% unemployment in February, and now the projections are we're possibly going to exceed 30% unemployment. Okay, we've never seen that. If you look at the graphs, and you look at the unemployment, you look at the way the economy has gone, we've never seen these things. But that doesn't mean it was totally unexpected. When you live the way I did and was growing up, and basically Mom told us things are good now, but that doesn't mean they're always going to be good, and you need to be ready. And so I'm even wearing my CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. I'm a master instructor with regard to that, and there are a lot of folks in the first responder community that are going way above and beyond to make sure that our communities are served in the way that they need to be at this time. So I haven't taught a course in quite some time, but I brought the pandemic flu course. You know, this was something that H5N1, H1N1. That's when they put all the social distancing and all of the different protocols that would be needed in a situation like this pandemic. And yet, at that time, I think we lost the swine flu. I think we lost some 37,000 people. But they didn't put into place. I remember they went into the schools and they cleaned out the schools because it affected the elementary children more differently than what this is doing. But they didn't put into place these social distancing measurements and requirements. They had them in place. They could have done that, but they chose not to do that at that point. And so that's why when this happened, and President Trump turned around and said, "Okay, what do we do?" They said, "Hey, they pulled out the books, they dusted them off, and they said, this is what we do." So how do I cope with it? How does my family cope with it? The true faith is the only thing that's there, you know, and it has to be that bulwark of the family. And if you look at our country, if you look at society, and you take a look at what is it that builds, you know, what is it that builds a strong society? Well, we know for a long time it's a strong family. And so there's been so many things that have happened in our country that have devastated the family. And so in one sense, that what's happened has really been a beautiful thing, because now you've refocused the family together and said, okay, now we've got to look at what is truly important. There's so much of our lives that we spend pursuing these goals, pursuing money and pursuing fame and fortune. And really, when it all comes down to it, those are not the important things. You've got to, every person's responsible to pursue their own faith, every person to work out their own salvation is what I was thinking. That every person's responsible for finding out what is truly important, and family's number one. And so we've coagulated as a family. I mean, right now I'm working at home. They sent all my equipment home. I'm an insurance adjuster during the day, and so I'm working from home. But so are the kids. You know, my wife is going crazy because she's got three kids in school, virtual school, you know, and having me home, and she's used to doing her own thing, and now all of a sudden she's got all of these different influences on her life. So that's number one. It's the true faith, and it is family.
It ties back to what we were talking earlier in the show about your mom making sacrifices.
Right.
Well, we all, in today's world that we're living in, we have no choice but to make sacrifices sooner or later. Now, dialing back a little bit back to the college days.
Okay.
When you graduated college.
I didn't.
Oh.
I didn't.
Okay.
No, I realized we were goofing off, and so I left, and I won't speak for anybody else, but I realized for me it wasn't right. I had when I went, like I said, I had just gotten out of the hospital. I was in a full body cast. I was still healing. I ripped my lower left leg to shreds. Lost 4 inches of tibia, crushed the fibula, dislocated the fibula, crushed the ankle. So it's what they call a long-term orthopedic injury. And so I started to, really revisit what I grew up with, as far as what I was taught, and compare that to what the real truth is. And so at that point, in December of 1985, I left school and started working, and have since, you've seen that I'm compiled certifications in emergency management, real estate, insurance. I love to learn, and so I've kept that up. I'm working on my master's degree. I say it wrong. It's a consolidated bachelor's master's at the same time. I'm working on that now through the cool company that I work for, and so I left school. So go ahead and complete the question.
Well, you pretty much answered the question, but the fact that you end up leaving school, you still found your own path. There's so many entrepreneurs out there who feel like, okay, I don't really need college, so I'm going to start my own path. You started your own path. And with that learning experience, before we wrap up the show today, with that learning experience, you had to adapt.
Right.
And I think that's
adapt
a key.
and overcome. That's the Marine way, right? I'm not a Marine, but that's I think that's beautiful, and that's what you have to do. And especially in today's society, just think. I mean, you're gonna have to do things in a different way because of what we're being presented with. And there are people right now that are sitting home watching Jerry Springer and what have you. Yeah, absolutely. And you can't afford to do that because, like I said, this is a snowball rolling downhill. It's going to get worse from here. You've got to take a look at it, and you've got to figure out a different way to approach age-old problems. And that's what they are. They are age-old problems. We're just seeing them in a new light here in America. But you cannot think for one split second that our enemies are not watching what is going on and trying to figure out, exactly, how to get the better of us. As a matter of fact, if you look at it, I can't say, and I don't think anybody could tell me at this point that this wasn't a man-made constructed situation. And I'll leave that there. I mean, I'm not a big conspiracy theory kind of guy, but you can't tell me. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, too, what you said earlier, to the point of your family is the most important thing.
Second.
God, and then family.
Right.
Country.
Right.
But when you see how people are put in difficult situations, someone listening right now, what would you tell them as they are trying to navigate these uncertain times?
Stop. You got to stop. When I was at Southwest Texas in the last semester, I went through and I had the study of the life of Christ and the philosophy of world religion, and I remember the counselor looking at me and he said, "You're a computer science major." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you realize it's going to take you decades to graduate with a computer science degree with the courses you've selected?" I said, "I do, but those are the ones I need right now." People have to stop. They've got to figure out what's important and then go from there. We've assumed, and so much of our lives is consumed with what we assume, and it's not necessarily the truth. You've got to get down to the deep and the nitty gritty, figure out exactly what is true, and then pursue those goals.
I just talked to someone recently on another show, a doctor, and he was talking about precision and how important it is to choose a target and not just fire.
Right, absolutely.
If you aim at nothing, you get nothing.
Right. You can't waste your ammunition that way. Right.
And
that's exactly right.
What you're saying, it just parallels to that statement, because in today's world, we have all these distractions available to us.
Sure.
And we almost have to go old school.
Right. Absolutely.
And touch on that.
Right. Well, if you've done any study of what the Russian intelligence community has done over the last several years, they have gone old school to where they realized there was nothing that they could put out over the internet that couldn't be hacked. And so in essence, they went back to the old typewriters. And so their communications now are done through written missives that are delivered. So they're typed out on old typewriters, and they got off of the whole internet thing. And that's really what we need to do. The social media that really is devastating our young people, they've got to come off of that. And it's got to be something where we actually physically, and it's incredible to think at a time when we're supposed to be social distancing, but we've got to come physically together in terms of our relationships with each other, and really find that, dare I say it, it's an old-fashioned word, and like you say, go old school, it's love, and what you don't see in today's communities and society as we've gone back, as you look over the last several years, we've lost something that we may never regain, and that's respect. People don't respect each other anymore. They don't respect property, and they don't respect each other. They don't respect. You hear all of this political, what is politically correct, but they don't respect the fact that other people have the right to have their own opinion. And by losing that respect, that's where the violence comes in. And that's what you haven't really seen yet, and could very well see in the very near future, when the fabric of our society is in essence ripped apart, and they can't provide the stimulus checks fast enough in order to be able to take care of things. Then you're going to see that fabric of society rip, and then at that point, that's when people look for scapegoats. They look for, it's a misused word, but that's when they look for somebody to blame. And that could very well be on the horizon.
And I hear what you're saying. Desperation can start setting in,
Mm-hmm.
but you can still focus on what's important in life.
Right.
And if you, like you said, I'm gonna echo what you said. If you pause,
right,
start reflecting on your priority list,
right,
and you can see that there's a lot of things you can knock off that list.
Sure. You got to get back to the simple. And you have to. We haven't, our lives are so, in all of the technology that we've built and constructed, it was intended to free us up. It was
to help.
Yeah.
Now it's just
it's
a
hurting.
crutch.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
How many times are you depending on a text message or email to come through versus just like you were saying? Well, we have to keep social distance right now, but at the same time, being old school is saying that we're not saying technology, number one disclaimer, we're not saying that technology is bad. We're just saying excessive, too much of the use of technology can get you off track.
Mankind has never constructed anything that he has not misused, period. And you look at email, how much of the email can you answer now? Probably down to about 20%, right? Because the bad guys have figured out how to mess it up. Same with text messages and the whole 9 yards. All of the technology that we've created is now being used against us. And when you look at the profound effect that it's had on our communities, so that if I were to ask, if I just take somebody off the street and say, okay, name the 10 neighbors that are closest to you.
Right.
They don't know them.
They have to Google it.
Yeah, right.
Disclaimer,
they have
used a browser.
But yeah, it's not like the old days when they had the swamp coolers and they didn't really want to turn them on, so that everybody would go out to the veranda and sit there, and you watch people go back and forth. Well, and you've seen kind of a little bit of that with some of the parades that you've seen on the news, where somebody would have I saw a birthday, and somebody will have something they want to celebrate, and they put it out on the social media, and everybody will drive by and say hello, so that everybody's kept that distance. But it's not helpful in terms of, like I said, especially if you look at the young people, especially if you look at the fact that their lives they're wrapped around social media. And so it hasn't been helpful to them, because they don't know how to interact with people. They don't know what a real book looks like. They've never had a phone that didn't have a wire, And so what's going to happen at this point You've taken everybody from the working environment and the school environment and everything, and you've sent them all home. And what are they all utilizing?
Technology
and the internet.
Yeah.
And now you take out the internet and you watch what's going to happen. You watch and see when that stress level hits the internet and it's no longer able to maintain the level of communication that we've demanded from it at this point, and then wait and see what happens.
Man, it was a good show today, but once again, this is 9:30 a.m. The Answer. You listen to I Am Refocused Radio, host Shemaiah Reed, talking to Riley Davidson, and your radio show. Tell the audience a little bit about it, how they can tune in.
All right, so it's called Bravo Zulu Radio, and the website's bravozuluradio.com. Bravo Zulu is a naval term, and it means a job well done. And so really what I focus on is history and heroes in history. I believe in so much of leadership training nowadays is watered down, and they believe in a weak leadership type of a format, whereas I believe what's known as the great man theory. And so in history, not saying I am, but in history, great men, Churchill, Patrick Henry, Washington, Lincoln, Truman, because he had to deliver the bomb. It wasn't gonna be done, and then but all of these times when Kennedy stood up and he said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And it's what they call great man leadership, that a man at a certain time in history, when that wave's about to break, President Trump has stood up, and he's taking a lot of flack. I don't know how he sleeps at night with everything that he has to go through at this point, but he stood up and said, okay, let's take this on. And there's no one that would be able to actually handle the pressures and the unprecedented events that have happened and have been there and done everything that needed to be done. There's no doubt that that improvements could have been made. It can't be said that they couldn't have been. But when you look at the fact that he is our leader in the country, then we all owe him that respect and that level of support, so that we can pick up things and do them, as opposed to governor versus president and all of the other scenarios that you're seeing played out. Mm-hmm. So there's Bravo Zulu, a job well done. And so really, based on my mom's life and the sacrifice that I watched her go through, and talking to people whose lives she had impacted, I knew, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of people out there. This is what a beautiful scenario you have on this 12th floor, to be able to look out and see all of San Antonio. There are a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of things good for the community. And when they go home at night, people don't know them. They don't know their name. They don't, unless they've had that internal impact with them, that one-on-one personal contact with them, then they really don't know them. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to reach out, and whether it's a teacher or even janitors, I know a janitor that I'd like to interview at this time. There are a lot of people out there that dedicate themselves to the community. They don't get their 15 minutes of fame and fortune, and they really deserve to be highlighted, because coaches, and like I already said, teachers, but the ability to impact a life for the future. I was watching Michael Jordan this morning. They're doing another show on him. But if you really looked at where he said, I was married to Jackson, his coach. And he said, when the coach said, it's the last dance, I knew it was my last dance as well, that I was going to leave. That's the impact that coach had on him. I think it was Phil Jackson. The impact that coach had on his life and his career, so that to the point where if that coach was going to leave, then he was going to leave the game of basketball. Possibly the greatest player ever, So, and I'm Kobe, obviously, but possibly the greatest player ever to say, if this man leaves, then I'm going to leave. So my show is about really looking back and taking a look at the heroes and the history, the heroes that rose above everything that they had to live through, Patton, Nimitz, and especially World War II is one of my favorites. Also, the Civil War. You know, what came out of that, and what should have been done, and what have you. But when you look at the great man theory of history, that people rose above Clara Barton, you know, and people rose above what was happening, and they contributed to society in such a way that, you know, it impacted and it changed the rest of history. We do stand on the shoulders of greats, you know, because of what they did before.
And like we always say on the show, it's about making these choices, because when you make choices, you take action. When you take action, you get results.
Right.
And your whole story, from the motorcycle accident to that moment afterwards, you made a decision that I'm gonna keep living my life, number one.
Right.
I'm gonna keep pushing forward. I'm gonna keep letting my work speak for itself.
Right.
But you also had influences from your mom, and what's the sacrifice that she made, and also what your dad did in the military world. I want to thank him for his services.
Absolutely.
And for all our first responders and military personnel out there, veterans and active duty, we want to thank you for your service, especially in the times that we're living in today.
Right.
Like we say on every single show, keep God first, stay focused, and peace.
Thank you.
That's good.